Make your day richer than it was before. Got some good times knocking upon your front door.
Well, hi everyone, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here. This seems like it's flipped around. Something is strange, and I don't know what it is. I think the camera got flipped. All right, well, whatever. Anyway, hi, welcome. Nothing else is really changing, but it looks different there, but it looks different. I'm not sure. Hi. If you are however you send good vibes, prayer, meditation, Reiki, just any way you do it, can you please send it to my friend April, who we love around here. She's been on my old show. Great human being who does amazing things in the world, who's going through some right now. Oh wait, I don't have the beeper on here. And so I would love for you to send her all of your love while she goes through this. I don't want to like throw out all of her crap right now. That's up to her. But April, I love you, and I will chat with you soon. Okay. Hey, did you know that outside of this show, I help other people produce and edit their podcasts and their live streams? And Introspection from Grief to Growth is a great podcast that I have been working with, I think, 4 years now. Amy Linder Lesser also has been a guest on this show. Releases a new episode every other week, and her new one is out now. You get it wherever you find your podcasts. And I want you to take a look, would you?
Reconnect with your loved ones through scent. If you're grieving someone, incorporating their scent into your daily life can be deeply comforting. Maybe it's their favorite soap, the smell of their old leather jacket, or even the type of flowers they loved. I know some women who spray a pillowcase with their husband's or partner's favorite cologne and keep it in bed next to them. They hold it and smell it through the night and find comfort in that. Others keep a soap near in the shower or the tub or on the sink. Keeping the scent close can serve as a bridge between the past and the present, allowing their presence to linger in a gentle, supportive way.
This week's episode is one I have been begging her to do for a long time, and it's all about scents. And you know how like when you smell something, you're instantly thrown back to your childhood or a person in your life or a moment in your life. And I wanted her to talk about that and how that helps or can, cause grief in the grief journey. So you can go to introspection.com if you'd like to see more of Amy's podcast. You work with her. She's an amazing grief coach, and I'm having Reiki with her this week. So that's exciting. And if you need help with your podcast, your live streams, send me an email at makeyourdayricher@gmail.com. And I'd love to work with you, especially if you're in the Charlotte, Lancaster, South Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina area. We can film it right here in this studio. We can customize the studio. You don't have to be at the carnival. You can be wherever you want to be. And I'd love to work with you. Okay. Coming up, we've got amazing people every day. I'm the luckiest person in the world. However, our guest today, Lisa Sugarman, is not here yet. So Lisa, if you're out there, please hurry and get on the stream. I hope I sent her the right link. I'll look during the break during the break. Okay. Anyway, but we all know, well, if you watch the show, you know that I've wanted to do this since I was 10 years old, since I saw my first episode of the Rosie O'Donnell show back in 1997 and thought, my gosh, that is a place for all the weird kids to just go and be celebrated and loved. And it was pure joy. And that's all I've ever wanted to do ever since. And I get to do it every day with this show. There's just Rosie stuff everywhere. Every moment of my life is defined by a Rosie moment. Her birthday's coming up on March 21st, and we are throwing her birthday party. And she's invited. I don't know if she knows about it or is coming, but she's invited. But you know who is coming? Some really great, great, amazing people. The woman who voices Angelica Pickles. I mean, come on. Nickelodeon royalty will be here. A kid named, he's not even a kid, he's an adult now. His name is Colin, who was plucked out of the studio audience of the Rosie O'Donnell show back in 1999 as a little boy who just loved musical theater and loved Rosie. And she has made him a little star. And he has blossomed into this amazing human being who brings the arts to where he lives in Connecticut. And it's going to be a really fun show. And then a surprise guest at the end. So stick around. March 21st is our big Rosie show. Okay. And I'm going to throw the link out there to join that show. And so if you're a Rosie fan, pop on. If you're Rosie O'Donnell, pop on, would you? Okay. We do have a really great show today. Lisa Sugarman is hopefully going to show up. Fingers crossed. I just talked to her yesterday, so I'll look while we're doing this. And but our first guest is a true champion for kids. As the author of books like Middle School Safety Goggles Advised, she empowers young people with the knowledge and tools they need to thrive. With a focus on friendship, social media, and self-awareness, her work helps kids navigate the complexities of adolescence. So please say hello to Jessica Speer. Here.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with you.
I'm excited to talk about this topic, especially when there's just so much pressure on kids. Is that new, or is that just because we're talking about it more?
You know, it's been increasing, and I'm actually hearing this directly from the kids themselves. So the book that you mentioned, my second book called Middle School Safety Goggles Advised, I talked to hundreds of middle schoolers about, you know, some of the trickiest things about their world, and you'd be surprised how much stress came up. Now, and I remember when I was that age, that was, you know, there was, of course, all the middle school tricky stuff, but stress wasn't at the top of the list. So these days, there's stress coming from all sorts of places. So it could be what's happening at home. It could be academic pressures or pressures they're feeling to succeed. It could be peer pressure. You know, I have something I call digital stress. So stress for them to keep up with all of their digital lives. So there is a lot more stress on kids today, which we're seeing in the numbers as far as depression and anxiety goes for preteens and teens.
When did you get on board with this mission? How did this come in your life?
Yeah, well, about 10 years ago, I am the mom of two now teens, but I had little girls then, and I've got a background in social sciences. And so I've always been interested in, you know, human relations and how we connect. And so when my girls were little, I became even more interested and started running friendship programs for kids. And that grew into my first book. You know, that then of course led to the second and led to the third. But you know, the common theme of all my books is, one, they're written for kids because I love talking directly to kids and providing resources that might be helpful to them. And two, they all grow out of research based on social sciences on how to help them connect and you know, thrive in today's really complicated world.
Yeah. Are they books that kids can read themselves, or that parents should be reading to them, or maybe parents should be reading them as well to learn?
Yeah, all of the above. You know,
Yeah.
parents can just hand it over to their kids. A lot of schools use them in school counseling programs, but I love it when parents can read it too, because they offer a framework for a whole lot of conversations and common language. You know, so my first book has got this funky title. It's called BFF or NRF, and I made up NRF, not really friends. So BFF, of course, is best friends forever, or NRF, not really friends. And that book really goes into healthy friendships. And so when parents read the book too, they have this common language helping their kids identify when they might have been in a situation that, hey, this isn't really a friendship here. You know, let's look at the behaviors here. This looks like this actually might not be a friendship. You know, so you know, it's helpful for both.
Yeah. As I feel like that is always changing. Like you were saying, you know, you made up not really friends. Like their vernacular is always changing. How are you keeping up with what is going on in that world?
Oh, I just spend a lot of time with kids, so all of my books grow out of direct research and work with kids. So,
Mm,
yeah, so that's how I try to stay up on top of it. But you're right, it always is changing. And so also knowing I'm not always going to be on top of it. And that's okay. So just being real authentic and honest about that and listening as hard as I can, trying to understand their worlds.
mm. You have a new book called The Phone Book. Can you tell me about that?
Sure. It's called the phone book, a little play on words. In our days, we actually knew an actual phone book that had people's phone numbers. This phone book is all about, life with a phone. Because a lot of kids, the average age kids get a smartphone these days is 11. And that
Oh
seems
my
to be
gosh.
trending younger. Yeah. So there's a lot to know when you have a smartphone, anything from stranger danger to digital privacy to digital footprints to fear of missing out, FOMO, and social media. So I wanted to put a guidebook out there for kids that really shares how to stay safe online. So the long
Mm,
subtitle of the phone book is Stay Safe, Be Smart, and Make the World Better with that powerful device in your hand. So I just wanted to,
mm,
as a mom myself, I wanted to put into a book all the things I wanted to be sure my kids and all kids knew about how to be safe in this online world, because it's a complicated place. And the research that I found when writing this book is the guardrails aren't really yet in place there for kids.
yeah.
So a lot of these apps and devices aren't built with kids' health and safety in mind. So we have to offer other ways to help them keep themselves safe online.
I can't believe that the average age is 11. I think I was 20, 21 before I got a cell phone. I was using calling cards. I was in college using calling cards to call home to my parents. How old were you? Do you remember?
Oh,
You got
totally.
your
It's a different world. Yeah, I remember being connected to the wall, with a long
Yes,
cord.
of course. Yes. A yellow phone in the kitchen. Yes,
Oh,
everybody
yeah,
had it.
then the cord was all stretched out, because we were
Mhm.
trying to get some privacy. So, kids
Yes.
have a lot of privacy now on their digital devices, which, can sometimes get them into some tricky situations. So, another book that I encourage parents or grandparents, caregivers to read alongside their kids, because I think sometimes when parents read this book, they don't, the way we as adults use our phones and devices is really different from how kids are using their
Mm.
phones and devices. So it's helpful for caregivers too, to really understand how are kids using devices these days to connect with their peers and strangers and others.
What did you want to be when you were a kid, when you grew up? A children's book author?
Oh, I remember wanting to be a writer. I remember
Mm.
and in fact, I wrote my very first book when I was in elementary school, and the sweet
Wow.
librarian put it in the library. But then, of course, like all of us, I went a totally different direction till I was 40, and then I got back to it. So I feel so lucky to be able to be doing this at this phase of my life.
Are you working on another book now by any chance?
I have 2 coming out,
Oh my
and I've got
gosh.
a few more that are, like, spinning in my head, but I have a board book for babies coming out in 2025, and in 2026, I have a book for preteens, which is the age group I typically write for, like 8 to 12 and 13. I have a book coming out that's all about mindfulness. So really
Mm.
directly talking to kids about ways to settle themselves and navigate stress and anxiety. So I'm excited about that one too.
Well, I hope you come back for all of those.
Oh, I'd love to.
Uh, that'd be fantastic. Can you talk about the friendship pyramid?
Yeah. Okay. So this is something that grew out of my friendship program that I ran in schools and then went into my first book. And anybody can download the Friendship Pyramid online. A lot of families have it on their refrigerator because it's a great, guidepost for kids as far as the ups and downs in relationships. So picture in your head just a little triangle. At the very tippy top of that triangle are our close friends. And so the pyramid talks about some of the qualities of those close friends, but also that these friendships can be hard to find. We tend to have
Mm.
less than 5 of these, and some of them might be our family members. So just honoring that, they're hard to find. Most of our friendships fall into what I call just friends, and that's a big swath of the pyramid. The whole middle part is friends, and I'm loose with this term because these days we've got online friends, we've got in-person friends. So this includes neighbors and people that we see that we are friendly with. We don't know them that well. So this is really important, especially for kids and teens, because you never know. These friends might grow into something closer. And then the bottom of the pyramid is acquaintances. So encouraging young people to also, stay open to people they don't know well yet. But running up and down the sides of the pyramid is change, because something that kids I've found working with them is surprising to them is they might have a close friend that might transition back to an acquaintance. And that's not fun or comfortable, but it actually happens. It's a thing. Our friendships do have phases and change over time. So helping kids know that happens. It's not easy or fun, but that happens. And then separate from the pyramid, I've got a little square that goes into the qualities of the NRF, the not really friends. So these are the friendships that aren't really friendships. And what are the qualities that go along with that? So we can know when we get into relationships that don't feel really good, what might be going on there and what we can do. Maybe set some boundaries, or just be cautious in those relationships, knowing these might not be the healthiest relationships we've got.
That pyramid also needs to be on adult worlds as well, too, because it's so important. I don't think it's hard to get used to that, especially as a kid, but as adults too. It's hard when you like people.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
relationships change.
Yeah, and so it's lifelong. So yeah, if anybody searches friendship pyramid Jessica Speer, it'll pop up on your screen. You could screenshot it, you could print it, do whatever you want. But yeah, it's kind of got these lifelong lessons about relationships that I found working with kids and teens. It was such a relief for them to know that, oh, it's not just me. This is how
Yeah.
this works sometimes, and that lifted a weight off their shoulders.
Yeah, and it's okay. People, life changes. Yes, I love
Exactly.
that. What do you love most about your life right now?
Ah, I just am having so much fun, being a mom and working with kids. I find kids so incredibly wise and smart. When I'm calm enough and open enough to really engage and listen to what they have to say, I can learn so much from kids, and it fascinates me. Growing up in today's world is such a different thing. So that is so fascinating to me. So I'm loving being a mom and working with that age of kids.
What is the best way that people can follow you and support you and keep up to date with you?
The easiest way is my website, which is Jessica Speer, SPEER.com. And that has information about my books and my social media. And I do write monthly articles that I post there as well and send out in a free e-newsletter, all on this topic, how to connect with kids, how to help them stay safe online, how to help them develop healthy friendship skills. So that's all available and for free on my website.
Wow. And I also want to talk about quickly the 9, we're not going to go through all 9 of them, but the 9 friendship truths that you talk about. I think also so important to have out there and have a conversation about.
Yeah, so let me mention just a few. And like I said, these grew out of work that I did with kids. And how I knew that, this was a helpful nugget is I'd see the relief in the room. So I already talked about one. So one of the friendship truths is friendships have different phases and change over time. So, okay, that can be clear to us as adults, but not. Another friendship truth, of course, is everybody makes mistakes, even in our friendships. We're all human. Another friendship truth is we teach others how we want to be treated by speaking up. And this was a tough one for a lot of kids, especially little girls. So, it's a skill to learn to speak up in our relationship. So that's just knowing that's the truth. And we can practice that over time to get better at that. And then one more, I've got 9 in my first book, but one more truth is, you choose which of your friendships to grow. So we can notice what are the relationships, what are the friendships that really light us up, and we can put more energy in those. So just all little nuggets that help kids navigate a really complex social world.
Yeah, and if you're reading it as the adult, it's also important for you. I'm going to go read these books because I don't have kids, but I feel like I need to learn from these. You have been a joy, Jessica. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's so fun to talk with you, Richard. And thanks for your work, for sharing all the information that you're sharing with the world.
Well, we're trying. I come back anytime. Anytime a book comes out or a newsletter, anytime you want, just come back.
Oh, I'd love to. Okay, I will. I'll keep you posted on when the next one hits the shelves.
Okay, good. JessicaSpeer.com is Jessica's website. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back after this. Don't go away. Are you tired of the same old drinks? Let your taste buds travel. Honkaku Spirits delivers authentic Japanese spirits right to your door. From family distilleries in southern Japan, they bring you exquisite small batch shochu, awamori, koji whiskey, and gin. It's more than a drink, it's a journey to Japan in every sip. Discover your new favorite spirit at honkaku.com and enjoy free U.S. shipping on any order. Thanks for sponsoring the show, Honkaku Spirits. Why am I not in here? There. It's almost like I know what I'm doing, but I don't around. Where am I? Why am I okay? Lisa, am I behind the TV or am I next to the TV?
You're next to the TV.
There is a monitor in this room that right now has me behind the TV. Okay, well, we're just going to go with it. Let's bring Jessica out here. This is what happens when you do live shows, Lisa. So nice to meet you.
Hey, it's nice to meet you too.
I'm going to officially do your actual intro, but apparently live shows, things happen. All right, are we ready?
Hey, we're ready.
All right. We're about to have an important conversation about mental health and breaking the silence around suicide. My next guest, right here, has turned personal tragedy into powerful purpose. Lisa Sugarman is a 3-time survivor of suicide loss who, after losing her father, dedicated her life to mental health advocacy. Lisa is a crisis counselor with the Trevor Project and the founder of the HelpHUB, a vital online resource for mental health support. That's HelpHUB, just so you know. She's here to share her story, offer hope, and help us all feel more comfortable talking about mental health. Lisa,
Richard,
thank you so much for the work you are doing in the world. Like, I have goosebumps already. I've been so excited to talk to you because it just has to, well, I'm going to ask you, how does it feel to be you in this moment in your life?
You know, it feels all the things. First of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate it so much. You know, I mean, it feels empowering. It feels vulnerable, super vulnerable, but that's kind of how I like to feel, because then I know I'm doing my job the way that I need to be doing it, because when I'm modeling that kind of vulnerability, it lets other people kind of bring their guard down and they can do the same thing too. I mean, it feels beautiful to be able to take something that was so tragic and so hard, and it still is tragic. It will always be hard, and turn it into something that can benefit other people, that can support and help and maybe guide other people. So it's, you know, it's a weird thing to feel kind of joyful about, but I do.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, because you're touching so many lives in such a positive way. And I guess that is another question of, when you are doing such great work, right? Mm-hmm. And you have this great, the HelpHUB, but it's surrounded by this dark cloud and a lot of tragedy and a lot of sadness in the people that you're working with and in your own life. How do you keep that attitude, a good attitude? And what happens when you don't have a good attitude in a day? Because that has to happen.
Yeah, it totally happens, because that's life. Like, I mean, you know, just because I'm in a different place kind of on that continuum of my own grief journey, because we're always on it. Once we're on it, we don't ever get off it. It just ebbs and flows. So, you know, for me, it feels good to be here. It's definitely hard to be here. And you're right, everything I do is pretty heavy. I'm talking about suicide in one context or another, or grief or loss or mental illness. And it can be tough at times. I'm on the lifelines, you know, every week, multiple times a week, listening to people who have some really tough situations in their life. And for me, I'm lucky. I mean, I have a really amazing support system at home. I have 2 grown daughters, but they're my best friends in the world. My husband is a rock. He's amazing. He's been with me. You know, we've been together since we were 17 years old. So he's always just kind of right there at my 6 to help me whenever I'm kind of feeling funky or low, because I'm an empath. So it's a weird place for an empath to be all the time, like to be in these highly sensitive situations and to feel everything so deeply. It can be tough, but I just have a really kind of non-negotiable personal daily practice. I get up, I meditate every morning. I kind of set my intention for the day. I move my body, I work out, I practice yoga, I journal a ton. So I do all those things when it gets heavy, just to kind of offload it into a place that I can reflect on.
Okay, good. Because the empath in me worries about people like you.
Yeah, you and
Like
my mom.
making sure you're okay. Like I want to
Yeah.
call you every day, be like, Lisa, everything good today? Okay. Can we make some art? Yeah.
I would love that phone call. I would love it.
Yeah.
Add me to your roster.
We will. Yes, I will absolutely do that. We'll tell everybody about the HelpHUB and what it is and who it's for.
So the HelpHUB is fairly new. It was kind of a soft launch in November, and it was a project. It was like a little passion project. It was nothing I ever intended to create. It just kind of happened organically. So I mentioned that I'm on the Lifelines. I do a lot of work with Samaritans. I'm a grief group facilitator. I am a storyteller with the National Alliance on Mental Illness. So I have all these like pockets and spaces where I do all of this advocacy and volunteer work. And I was, listening to people and helping people and offering resources to people, and realizing that a lot of the same resources are just kind of getting recycled every day, which is a good thing. It's not a bad thing, but all of the bigger resources, like the bigger helplines and platforms, are on every other resource page that you look at with all these big organizations. And it's great that they're putting all this out there, but they're kind of generic, if you know what I mean. They're not specific to certain communities. And what I realized working with so many different people across so many different populations is that we don't all need the same things the same way. Like we all go through the same things, like we all experience depression and grief and loss, and some cases suicide. But yet the way that we deal with that and the way that we experience it is different. Like it's different if you're part of the queer community, or if you're part of the BIPOC community, or the Latinx community, or the elderly or veterans. It's different. And so I couldn't find a place where anybody could go, regardless of what community they're a part of, where they could find anything that was relevant to them specifically. So I started accumulating all of these resources, and eventually had this crazy, stupid long list of resources that had no order or structure. And then I kind of finally took like this big step back and looked at it in a more objective way and said, okay, well, how can we make this benefit everybody in the same place? Break it into categories. So those categories became a big piece of my website. And then ultimately I just kind of decided in the fall of last year that it really was my website. It needed to be my website. So I just completely rebranded everything. And it's now the HelpHUB.co. Thanks for that little plug down there. And it's right now, what I'm being told is one of the largest and most inclusive free online mental health directories, toolkit directories out there. It's got 16 different categories. Whatever community you're in, you can go there and immediately find resources that have already been vetted. You don't have to think about it. And that's the point. Like when you're struggling, when you're in a deep, dark headspace, last thing you want to do, or even have the capacity to do, is go out and search for help. You just need to know it's there.
Yeah. So, yeah. We talked about categories of people, like different types of people who can go there. What about ages?
Ages. Well, I mean, any age can certainly visit the HelpHUB. I mean, all of the information, like I said, is free. It's available. Most of it is in some form or another downloadable or shareable. I mean, granted, there is quite a bit of information on there that focuses on crisis support and suicide prevention. So, you wouldn't want to have grammar school kids, leafing through all that information necessarily. But it, definitely there's a section for children, for teens. It goes all the way up to the elderly with resources for them. So, I mean, it really is for anybody who might need it in any community. And it's also global. So I have tons of resources in Canada, in Europe, in Asia. I have almost all of the crisis and support lifelines in every country in the world, or just about every country in the world. So yeah, I mean, there's kind of a little something in there for anybody, wherever you are.
What you said you started in November. What are your plans for the HelpHUB? How do you see it working in the future?
Again, it's been an organic work in progress. I continue to add new resources to it daily. Right now, I converted my YouTube channel is now the HelpHUB on YouTube. TikTok is now the HelpHUB on TikTok. It's got an Instagram page. I'm launching a podcast actually a week from today. It launches on March the 12th, called The Survivors, and that will be out everywhere you can get podcasts. You'll also be able to find it on the HelpHUB. So it's kind of got a little bit of everything and continues to evolve. I wrote a column for many, many, many years, and the archives of that column are up there. So I continue to write articles and columns and populate, kind of the library of content with that. So it's always growing. It's always changing. We've been developing new partnerships with so many online resources, mental health resources, and we continue to collaborate. So there are little bits and pieces being added all the time.
You talked about, how we all experience grief. We all have experienced depression. I think sometimes in I don't know, from my own experience, you think, well, it's not as bad as someone else's, so I don't need help. I don't want to take up, vital resources from someone else. Can you talk a little bit or like your explanation of like, when you're just having a bad day?
Yeah. And
when you start to go, wait, something's, because, things like depression, you don't just wake up one day and you're like, oh man, I'm depressed. Like this, it's a process that suddenly your entire life has changed. So what are some things that people can be maybe thinking about or noticing in themselves or maybe a loved one?
Yeah, that's a great, great question. It's like you said, it's kind of all relative to who you are. There are a lot of people. I just had this conversation with someone yesterday, for instance, about calling the 988 lifeline, the suicide and crisis lifeline. A lot of people just see that and think about that as a place you can only reach out to if you're suicidal. Well, that's totally not true. Complete myth. And let's just debunk it right here, because it's for anybody who's in any kind of a crisis. And this is what touches on your point and your question. Crisis is relative. Like what might be a crisis for me, you'll sail right through it, and vice versa. So I think the thing to really focus on is with yourself or with someone else, if patterns start to change, if behaviors start to change, if you start to feel yourself pulling away from your world, the people in your orbit, if all of a sudden, the same thing can be said for a family member, a friend, or someone you work with, if all of a sudden they're not communicating as much, or maybe their work performance is somehow being affected, is less than what you're used to it being. If they're canceling plans, if people's appearance start to change. I mean, a lot of people, when they start to feel depressed, they don't think about self-care and hygiene and putting on a clean shirt every day. I mean, it's like little things, but they become bigger things. And it can tend to be usually, like you said, it's not usually an overnight thing. It's more like a slow burn. So it's, you kind of have to be self-aware when it's you that you're looking at. And we just have to kind of keep our eyes peeled at the people around us who we care about, because it's easy for people to slip under the radar, especially the extroverted people who are all about, oh, I'm great, I'm living my dream, and life is great, life is so good. Like you got to ask people open-ended questions that kind of forces them to answer without a yes or no. Do you know what I mean? Just to kind of dig deep and kind of really figure out where people are at.
I have said this on this show as well. Like when people ask, how are you? Finding the people that really mean, how are you?
Yeah.
And of course we have to say, oh, we're great. Today's a great day. But if we really answered how we were feeling in that moment or that day, I think our relationship with people would change, because you're just expected to say one thing.
Yeah. And that's stupid. And it's terrible that we're sorry, but it's true. Like it is terrible that we have all been kind of classically conditioned to believe that. But and look, I really do believe that when people ask because they genuinely want to know. But I think that people who are asking, as much as they genuinely want to know, people are terrified of what you're actually going to say, because then, okay, if I say, Richard, how you doing today? And you're like, actually, I'm not that great today. And maybe it goes deeper. Maybe you're like, I'm unhappy in my life, or I've lost the will to live, or you don't know where a question like that can take you. And people are so terrified of the answer because they don't know how to respond. They don't know, well, what do I do next? And one of the things that people need to keep in mind is that it's not our job as friends, even as partners, as coworkers, as family members. Like, it's not our job to fix you or to fix someone else. It is our responsibility, though, as a world that we all live in together, to kind of look after each other. So what we can do in those cases is say, look, like, I can see that you're having a really hard time and I really want to help you, but I'm not sure that I'm capable of helping you, that I have the skill set or the knowledge to help you, but you know who can? Do you have a therapist? Can I help you find a therapist? Have you heard about the 988 Crisis Lifeline? It's for anybody who has any kind of a crisis. Maybe you're just feeling depressed, or you're struggling with coming out, or you're in a bad relationship, or you are feeling suicidal. Those are the people who have the resources and the training. So there's always that one nugget, which is the 988 Lifeline, that we all can keep in our pocket, that is the answer to the question of, what do I do now?
What did you want to be when you were a kid, when you grew up?
Well, I didn't expect to be this. I mean, well, I shouldn't say that. That's kind of a lie. I mean, I write books, I write content. I've always wanted to be a writer since I was old enough to hold a pencil. I was writing little newspapers in my hometown, in my neighborhood. My poor neighbors were like, forced to read my little 2-sentence articles and pretend that they were like Pulitzer Prize winning. But I always wanted to be a writer in some way. And I'm really, really incredibly fortunate to be in a place, time in my life, where I've been able to do that. I continue to be able to do that. I'm doing it now in very new and very different ways. I've been a parenting author for many, many years, written a bunch of parenting books, and then completely almost hard stopped when I found out the truth about my father's suicide, and everything kind of exploded, imploded at the same time. And when all the pieces kind of settled, I came out on the other side of kind of that trauma as someone very different, with a very different goal. I felt like, I had kind of a unique story to share. I mean, I've lost my dad twice. I lost him when I was 10, when I thought it was a heart attack that took him. It wasn't. I found out 35 years later that my dad had actually taken his own life. And my dad is one of 3 important people in my life who I've lost to suicide. So all of a sudden I was a survivor. I didn't even know what that meant for me as a human. And it slowly kind of morphed into me wanting to do something with this lived experience. And I mean, I've been kind of shadowed by grief since I was a 9-year-old kid, and, lost a relative for the first time. And so there's a lot of lived experience, and there have been a lot of things that have helped me along the way. And so I was in a position to share that. And, now my next book that's coming out next year is actually the memoir of losing my father twice. It's also going to incorporate all the resources and tools from the HelpHUB. So it's going to be a really unique kind of book.
Wow.
And I can't wait. We're starting the editing process now. So we're ramping things up. So it's exciting.
When you experience so much pain, loss in such tragic ways, when you're young, do you have like a moment that, because obviously there was a ton of grief, and you can go down the path of the people that you help at the HelpHUB, or you can take this route of creating this life and this legacy that you have. But how did that change for you, or what changed? Do you know?
I don't know. I mean, it wasn't instantaneous. It absolutely wasn't instantaneous. I mean, I kind of shut down from the world in a lot of ways for a number of years right after I learned this. So I'm 56 now. I learned when I was 45. So that's 11 years ago. When I found this out, my mother, until that point, when the truth of my dad's death came out, My mother had never shared my father's suicide with a single living soul. So no one knew. She kept that secret, and she did that to protect me. And I'm unbelievably grateful to this day that she did that. But I just kind of became split into two different people. I was one person outwardly, like in the world. I was a mom. I had young kids. I was working. I had a family, and a world of friends. And so I was kind of one person in that place. And then when I would close the bedroom door and my husband and I would climb into bed at night, I think it was 3 years, I cried to him every night. I don't know how my kids didn't hear it for that much time. And when I came out of that, I remember my mother very early on, after I found out the truth, she was the one who said to me, if you want to write about this or you want to do something with this, I want you to know that you can. And I was like, not even thinking about any of what I currently do. I couldn't even think that far. But like little by little, I actually, the whole thing, if I have to trace it all back, the whole thing started with a podcast interview. I was asked, it was during the pandemic. I had I had told my children about the truth, and people in my life, my friends and family now knew. And so it was out in the open, but I wasn't doing anything with it in terms of content. I wasn't writing about it. And I decided to write a post for International Survivors of Suicide Loss Day. And I did share my story online for the very first time. And a podcaster out of Canada just stumbled on my story and asked if I'd be willing to share it on her podcast. And I had never even given anything like that, like a second's worth of thought. But I thought, okay, this is sure, I would love to. And I did. And honestly, Richard, the reaction that I got from that experience blew my mind. It blew my mind, just people finding me and reaching out to me and coming and saying, thank you for your strength, or your story inspired me, or this is what I learned from what you've gone through. And it just started a complete domino effect, and I have not stopped since.
And when you're talking about your mother, all I was thinking was, imagine what she was holding in for all of those years. Like, I don't like crying on this show, but my gosh,
it's a lot. It was a lot. And she was a single mom. I'm an only child, so it was just the two of us. And she was also, she was taking care of my grandmother who lived with us. So there were 3 generations in my house, and my mom had so much on her plate. And she is just the most remarkable human you could ever meet. She is the most adorable person, the most joyful person. I mean, I think about everything my mom has gone through in her life. She's lost all of her siblings. She's lost her parents. She lost her husband. She had to keep this secret. And my mother is just like the poster child for positivity, which is not to say that my mom doesn't have bad days and sad days. But the greatest gift, I think, that came out of learning the truth about my dad, there were 2 things. First of all, it put me on this path, and it's allowed me to do the things that I do right now, or given me, I guess, the why to do these things that I know are helping other people, because I hear about it from them all the time. But the greatest thing of all is that now I can be there for my mom. Like now you're going to make me cry. I can hold all the space in the world for my mom. And so in the last 11 years since the truth came out, we have been in one long, beautiful 11-year conversation that I imagine will never, ever end. And it's just been so beautiful to talk about it all. She's been on podcasts with me. She'll be making an appearance in this book that I'm writing, but I'm not going to say anymore because that's a surprise. And being able to support her has been the greatest gift in the world to me, because of all that she's done for me. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her doing what she did.
This should have been like our Mother's Day show or something. That's beautiful. Beautiful. You're also, I want to have you back because you have amazing books that are out there for people as resources as well. And then you have the new book, and we don't. This would be a Barbara Walters special if I could make it. So I'd love to have you back to talk about your books if you'll come back.
I would love it. All you have to say is come back, and I will be there.
Okay. Well, when I call you, then I'll just.
Right. You'll call me to check in, and then we'll make a plan.
Exactly, Lisa. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it, and all the work you're doing. I can't I can't even with you. You're nuts.
Well.
You're nuts. I love you.
I love you
Lisa
too.
Sugarman, the HelpHUB.co is the website. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you, Richard. You too.
Thank you. That is our show. I have cried during the show. We have laughed. We've done it all. So we're going to go now. Go make your day richer. Go make somebody else's day richer. You've made mine by watching the show, and I love you for it. We're going to be back tomorrow with Nina Khan from the Flowertown Players Theater. And Ed Ray Hill is here to talk about his book, 1 Mile at a Time. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.